Launches are the most overlooked part of your marketing, yet they're the least discussed. My name is Harvey Lemus, and I've been in marketing for the last 6 years. And today I have a banger for you because we're going to be talking about the basics on why a launch is essential and why it's relevant to you and your marketing experience. So, we're going to talk about why gurus always overcomplicate absolutely everything, what a launch is, how a launch actually works, and launches are different and why they're all different. So just to give you an example, if you are creating marketing and you want to roll out a product or a service, you need a systematic way where you can get your product in front of people, but not in a way where it's slowly dripped, but you create a bunch of momentum and a bunch of hype. So that way, when it hits the market or when it actually is delivered to whatever you're presenting, it allows for the power of social proof and for the power of a bunch of people talking about it, or like the community, all of those compounding effects to make your launch even better, right? It multiplies it rather than just you doing sales and it's like you're talking to one person, nobody knows who you are. What a launch is, it creates an audience, and then you roll out your product or service to that audience, and because of that you actually create like a network effect because of the launch. And this is why a launch is super impactful. And if you were to do sales one by one, you wouldn't have that effect, which is why launches are amazing. So if you are creating a service or anything or like a product, just imagine if you were to like actually roll it out to a bunch of people and they were all to be in a room and you were to show them the product at the same time. Don't you think that they would communicate with each other about your product? And wouldn't that make them even more committed to actually investigating into your product, buying your product, talking about your product to other people, blah blah blah? Which is why people back then used to not sell just a one-to-one, but they used to gather a room of people and they used to sell to them at the same time and present to them at the same time. And because they were all watching at the same time, because one person bought, the other person would buy, and it would create this compounding effect of people who would purchase. So that's what a launch is. And you could do this in person, kind of like Elon Musk when he was revealing the Tesla, or you can do this digitally now, if it's through email or if it's through live stream. Like, I'm not going to talk about the famous person who did over 100 million, just like that, or I'm sure there's tons of different examples you can probably think of. So gurus always overcomplicate everything, because we live in an era of marketing where like everyone's telling you that you need a hook, and everyone's telling you need this, and everyone's telling you need that, and then you need leads, and then you need this, and you need that. And reality, like the whole point of all that can be condensed into a launch. And if you understand how to do a launch, like you definitely need all of that, but under what context, right? Most people don't disclose that. People think that they can just run ads and then make it work by tomorrow. However, if you were just to put all those marketing tactics and all that aside, and if you were to create a launch, then you don't need to learn how to run ads, and you don't need how to do this and do that, because you know where to identify an audience or create an audience. And then because you have your fundamentals down of how to do a launch, you know why you're creating an audience in the first place. Most people, they just create an audience for the sake of making an audience, and they don't know what the effectiveness is behind having an audience. They just like, oh, people know about me, then slowly, one by one, they'll click my link and then they'll buy. Which is true, that is possible. However, if you were to take a launch approach, you're able to multiply your effect of when you actually present it. And what this does is it allows you to have special incentives when you do launch, that you do it for a limited amount of time, which increases people buying. So this is why launching is the most effective way to get people to buy, right? So this is why I'm saying gurus overcomplicate everything. I honestly, within the last couple of years, I haven't heard the word launch in marketing or typical influencers. No one's saying that. Everyone's talking about ads, or everyone's talking about SEO and this and that, but no one's talking about what a launch is. Because realistically, if you're gonna build a business, you only need a launch. Like, you don't need to do SEO and YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and need to be at your networking events and blah blah blah. You don't need all that. You only need one thing, right? Choose one thing, learn how to launch within that one medium, and that's it. That's literally all you need. So what is a launch, right? I kind of explained it, but a launch is essentially when you distribute your product or service within a deadline, and because there is a deadline, there's an incentive to actually there's an incentive to take action, but you also get the benefits of having the network effect within the launch, right? So like if you're doing the super popular way of doing it now is like a webinar where it's a 1 hour video, and then or something along those lines, 30 minutes, an hour. You explain your education, your whole product or service, and then at the end you deliver it, and then there's like an hour or two to buy, or 24 hours, and that is a form of like a mini launch, right? You're launching within 1 or 2 hours, and then the deadline extends to 1 or 2 hours after the video, or 24 hours, and that's like a mini launch. However, the biggest launches are done over a very long period of time. It's not just like within a day, right? So most people think of it. Launches are built up for years, or maybe months, or days, or weeks, months, and then it's all delivered within one day, which that creates the compound effect of like all that momentum going into one moment. It launches, then however the launch is open for, and then it closes on one day. And because there's this period of buying, people typically buy out the gate, and then there's a little period of time where they don't buy, and then right when their deadline is approaching, and there's a lot of urgency or scarcity, because the urgency is the deadline's ending, so they need to buy, or scarcity is there's maybe no more spots, or there's low stock or whatever. Then that's the thing that makes launches so effective. And that's how launch works. It's typically spread out within a period of time, and so there can be this buying window, and then throughout that buying window there's a period, there's like frenzies, right, which is at the beginning, and in the middle it's a little bit dead, and then at the end there's tons of people taking action because of urgency and scarcity. That's why launches are super effective. And launches are different based on the goal. So there's different types of launches. So there's launches that you can do within advertising, right? So maybe if you're running ads, you get a bunch of email lists, and then it's like either on one day. There's another type of launch where it's evergreen, so it means it's running 24/7, and these are the launches that have made a lot of really successful businesses. Is they're able to automate a launch and pretty much do a launch every day, even though it's automated. They're not manually doing it, within email, within text messaging, and that's how people have been able to automate launches without having to do the whole build up and then actually do it in one day. However, those who actually go through that process end up having better results because they're doing it manually. However, one is running within a period of time, and it requires human effort and like energy, which is why they're limited to themselves, versus the launches that are evergreen. They're running 24/7. However, it loses effectiveness because it's not actually live, right? So you could have a system that works for you 24/7, or you could have something that works for you like within a very specific amount of time, because you're doing it like human, with like a human approach to it, right? You're doing it manually. So think about how you could do a launch, right? If you were to hypothetically, not saying you are, but if you were hypothetically to do a launch, which all the big businesses, know what a launch is. Let's say you were to put yourself in those shoes, right? Don't just make this something that's like, oh, it's a cool idea, but like, how would you actually implement this on your end? If you have a tree service business, or if you have a party business, or if you have a fitness business, or if you have a security business, right? How would you actually launch? How would you be able to create an audience, or find an existing audience, and then create an asset like a webinar, right? Which is like a video, kind of like the one you're watching, a video, or you're able to create a like an email sequence, maybe if instead of like just a video, it could be text, right? You get this letter, then this letter, or this email, then this email, then this email, then this email, because you don't need video to sell people. You could just do it through text, right? Or you could do it through video, or you can do it in person, right? Where can you find an existing audience if it's digitally, which is what email, which is what video, social media, like that's all digital, right? But how were people doing it before the digital times? They were doing it in person. If there was an event where people were speaking on stage, someone would come up with a mic, go through their presentation, and say, hey, we're doing this. This deal is lasting for this amount of time. If you're interested, then come say hi to me, and we can talk about the next steps. And then they would give you a paper, and then from there you would fill out the paper, and then you would have a call, and then you would work with them, right? So like, how were people able to create these launches before the digital times? It's exactly that. It's either there was an event and someone would have a presentation, or someone would that's pretty much it. Like they would either have a presentation because there was an event going on and people would do that type of stuff, or a salesperson would be like, hey, we're having an event at this time, at this date, at this place, come and bring whoever you want to bring, right? And through those prospecting activities, if it was calling or if it was walking door knocking, they were able to gather a bunch of people in a certain room, and because of this, they were able to do a launch, an event, So that is how marketing used to be done, right? It was these event-based marketing, or launches, you could call them. And this is how things were done back then, right? It was either you had an existing business and you grew through referrals, right? You were advertising on like newspapers or magazines, or the printing press or whatever, right? That used to exist, or if it was billboards or any form that wasn't digital, and you would have, typically if you had an advertising, you had a number, and then they would call you and they would submit their information to speak to you. If it was an automated machine or if it was a human picking up, that was one way of doing it. But the most effective way, that before the phone even existed, was launches. It was events. So this is why launches have been around forever. It's just no one speaks about it anymore because it's not really sexy. And I know, because it's not sexy right now, there will be a period of time where it's like the hottest thing, because right now no one's talking about that, right? Everyone in marketing world is talking about leads, or everyone's talking about ads, or all these things that, yes, they work and they're effective. However, it isn't one of the fundamentals of marketing, because ads are just a channel, right? Regardless of where you're advertising, but a launch is more of a strategy. And the strategy is what makes it work, because it doesn't matter if you do a launch on Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook, real life, on a magazine. If you're able to acquire an audience and then create a date where you give them your material, right, your sales assets, and then they have a deadline to actually purchase or to register, that's a launch, right? You can do this through email. You can do this through, and it could be like a digital click, or you can do this through magazines, and maybe it's a phone number they have to call. There's so many different ways to do launches, which is why it's a principle of marketing, and that's why no one talks about it, because it's not hot right now. But when it is hot again, because that day will come, then everyone's gonna be like, oh my God, are you doing a launch? Blah, 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 right? So hopefully that's helpful, and that's why launches are gonna be relevant in your life. And if you know how to do a launch, then you can skip all this other, BS that's like not really relevant, and how to actually create a lot of momentum for a business within a short period of time. And a launch is how you do that. And no one's talking about that right now. I don't know why, because again, I just don't know. I don't know. But that's literally the most effective way on how to create a business. Not overnight, because a launch, it could. If you find an audience overnight, which you go tap in someone else's existing audience, you could do a launch overnight. However, if you're creating your own launch, then it may take a little bit of time, right, to actually build the audience. So you decide what you want to do and how that works for you. And hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully you understand why a launch is relevant and how you can use it. So see you in the next one.